Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Welcome into the Savage Nation. I am Michael Del Giorno, in for Dr. Savage, filling in again today. He'll be back on Monday. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the New York Times bestseller, Trump's War. More important now than ever. And the news keeps flying, doesn't it? Well, greetings from Music City. Let's discuss the top story of the day, the surprise of the day. Spicer is out. Now, I have to put this all into perspective for you, don't I? Because what everybody's talking about on social media is not, hey, this is a step away from Reince Priebus and establishment Republican voices and towards trusted inner New York circles. And that's why Scaramucci has had, or the splitting of the communications director with the press secretary so we get messaging better. And I'd love to sing, happy days are here again. All the problems are gone. Spicer's gone. They're going to start communicating now. And I can't do any of that with a straight face, right? Do I think this White House has a communications problem? You bet. Does this White House thinks it has a communication problem? You bet. That's why Spicer's out, Scaramucci's in, and here comes Sarah. But will it ultimately solve its communication problems until it solves the great communicator's communication problem, Donald Trump? No. So we take it all kind of with a grain of salt, but let's look into this. Let's find, if we can, a silver lining in this. Now, here's my silver lining, Anthony Scaramucci. Because we've seen attack after attack after attack. And by the way, there's a difference between revelation and attack, inference and evidence. So all this begins. Now, and as we talked about the last time I filled in for Michael, and Michael certainly teaches you quite well. Look at the things that we've ignored. I mean, there's definitely double standard. I mean, you want to compare what we were talking about before the Spicer resignation and comparing, I don't know, Donald Trump having Miss USA pageant in Moscow? If a Russian ever bought a condo in one of his commercial buildings, that's collusion, that's scandal, that's a smoking gun, that's a cover-up. When you had the IRS, and this goes all the way to the Oval Office, nobody ever even drug Doug Shulman under the microscope. And even President Obama accepted the resignation of the interim IRS Commissioner, Stephen Miller, as he protected the one who he gave the orders to, Doug Shulman. And you all know the name Lois Lerner, but never mind Jack Lew and others all involved. But this goes all the way to the Oval Office. A president of the United States, ready like no other anointed one ever before him. Nobel Peace Prize before he ever does anything. He's ready to give us hope and change. And what stopped him? Well, some immediate consequences and challenges in the economy, but ultimately the midterm election in 2010. And he never saw it coming any better than Hillary saw what was coming. And if you're Barack Hussein Obama, you say, I'll be damned if I'm going to let that happen again. And you call in the Treasury Department. You call in your IRS commissioners. And you go, what the heck is this Tea Party? By the way, they have tried to model the Tea Party with deep leftist pockets and fake paid-for rioters and protesters. But the Tea Party, that was organic. That was grassroots. That was Americans saying, are you kidding me? Spending our way out of a spending problem and bankrupting our children and grandchildren? No, you will focus on the debt. You will focus on liberty. You will focus on the priorities of government, that which is the role and responsibility of the government, and then we'll take care of that which is the role, responsibility of the self-governed. And nobody saw it coming, and everybody mocked it, and then they, laughed at it, then they attacked it, and it still defeated them. Well, if you're President Obama, you call everybody into a room and say, all right, you all underestimate him. I may have underestimated him. Everybody's been laughing at him, and they just kicked our butt. And we just lost control of the House. Do not let this happen in my reelection. And what happened after that? The IRS targeted. Now, you go through all the documents. It's all there. They targeted anything that said Tea Party, anything that said Patriot, anything that said 9 to 12, anything that said Second Amendment, anything that said liberty, freedom. Oh, and they did some other ones too, leftist organizations. But at the end of the day, not a single conservative organization targeted got its approval. All the liberal ones did. So this was to silence the conservative grassroots after losing a midterm election for the purposes of harassing and intimidating through audits those who gave to them, stop funding, silence, and stop. That was specifically collusion, specifically scandalous, and a cover-up. Proven. Even Obama admitted it, as if he had nothing to do with it. And then said it was over because the interim IRS Commissioner Stephen Miller had resigned. And by the way, this story hasn't gone away. A lot of these conservative organizations still haven't gotten their nonprofit approval. Still are being harassed. Oh, by the way, we got a 7,000 document dump in March. And a lot of them point to Obama. And the IRS won't release them. Well, this is a long way from over. But that was designed to interfere with an outcome of an election. Nothing came of it. And the IRS still won't schedule a release date for these latest documents. Still haven't approved many of these people. And there's no question it was for opposition research. It was for the auditing, harassing, discouraging, and intimidating of donors, and to silence these grassroots organizations. For what? The outcome of winning elections. Isn't that bigger than anything anybody's come forward with Trump Jr. visiting with somebody about adoption? Or how about Fast and Furious with Obama? Or how about Benghazi and Hillary? Or the email scandal? Or Bill visiting on the tarmac in a plane with an attorney general? And it just mysteriously then led to the unprecedented actions of Comey and the FBI. Oh, I think you all can pass the sniff test of what scandal really looks like, what collusion really looks like, what cover-up really looks like. So how much of this is a communication failure? You know, I always say behind every story, behind every headline is a story, and behind every headline there's so much to talk about. I think this is a heck of a lot more than Spicer. And I don't think it's a small statement to look you in the eye and say, you're the president of... I said it on the golf course to somebody the other day. Because that's where all the great minds are, right? Golf courses. Obama, Trump, we're all golfing. I said, do you realize if Donald Trump would have just put his hand on that Bible, taken the oath, moved into the White House, and sat there and did nothing and said nothing, he'd be so much better off. And let them come to you. Just, frankly, do nothing. And you would be off to the greatest start of any president of the United States. Look at the market. Look at the restoration of our credibility nationally. I mean, he's turning out to be a great foreign policy president. He's a disaster domestically. And he has certainly dropped the ball. Now, listen, when you're the president of the United States, you don't have to tweet. It was fascinating to watch him sit down with Pat Robertson. But I don't care who you sit down with or who you trust to sit down with. You're the president of the United States, and if you sit down and talk, people are going to report it. I mean, I am just done making excuses for him. Not everything is the result of an attack. You're the president of the United States. You won the presidency in a messaging war. Win a heart. Win a mind. Communicate consistently and clearly. And lead. Well, it takes great communication to get many people to go in one direction and lead. So obviously the White House is admitting to all of us they have a communications problem. And they do. And you agree and I agree. Now, is Spicer being out and Sarah Huckabee Sanders being in the solution? Well, I don't think so. So where are the silver linings? Well, I go back to Anthony Scaramucci. Listen, a lot of people have been attacked, from Donald Trump to Donald Trump Jr. to a lot of people. And they linger for a news cycle. I'm going to get into that and dissect that more next half hour. Because we're really playing a beat and melody game, and nobody really knows the words of the song. And that's why we're all just dancing along. And that's why we can't get this freaking song playing over and over again to stop. But who's the one person who did make it stop? And took care of it in 48 hours. He even got to end on a merciful note. Anthony Scaramucci. This guy knows how to play. There's a scene in Bronx Tale where Sonny asks these bikers to leave his bar. And they think they're real tough guys. And these are just a bunch of old Italians in slacks. What are they going to do? And then he looks at him. He goes, first, I asked you to leave. Then he walks up to the door and he turns the lock. He says, now you can't leave. And the blood left all of their faces. The fight was over before it started. You didn't see what was coming, but you should have been crapping your pants all along. Now the door's locked and you can't leave. And then the beating ensues. That's kind of how Scaramucci plays, you know? Does anybody want to raise their hand if you think anybody's going to go after Anthony Scaramucci again? After what happened to CNN? Anybody care to? So is he just turning to the one guy that does know how to handle attack, does know how to come out the winner, and nobody's going to dare? You know, you watch Happy Days. We kind of join those lives in progress. And Fonzie's the cool guy in the leather jacket, but presumably Fonzie must have beat the snot out of a lot of people that nobody would mess with him. Oh, by the end, I don't know what he was. A gay guy upstairs. Hey, Mrs. C. I mean, they ruined the character, but the presumption is he must have beat somebody up a lot, that nobody messed with him. That's Anthony Scaramucci. Ain't nobody going to mess with him. Yeah, make him communications director. Here's a guy that knows how to win these senseless fights. Cut it and end it. Is it a movement away from the Priebus crowd and towards a more trusted New York inner circle? Maybe. Is it reward for how he handled his scandal? Maybe. But you know what's funny? All of the reaction on social media is about Melissa McCarthy's character on Saturday Night Live. Now they can't do it. Spicer's gone. Well, I guess we got to trust them. Let's start with your new press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, on the resignation of Spicer and the statement from the president.
I'd like to read a statement from the president on the resignation of Press Secretary Sean Spicer. I am grateful for Sean's work on behalf of my administration and the American people. I wish him continued success as he moves on to pursue new opportunities. Just look at his great television ratings. Sean will continue to serve the administration through August, and the president has also appointed Anthony Scaramucci as communications director, and I have a statement on Anthony's appointment as well. Anthony is a person I have great respect for, and he will be an important addition to this administration. He's been a great supporter and will now help implement key aspects of our agenda while leading the communications team. We have accomplished so much, and we are being given credit for so little. The good news is the people get it, even if the media doesn't.
Well, the fact that there's a reference to ratings is enough to take some of the luster and shine off the gift. Bottom line, Spicer's gone. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is in. Is this a big story? Yeah. Is it a big deal? I'm not so sure. The communications and messaging problems can't be solved until you fix, ultimately, the president. Perhaps as his new press secretary statement makes clear. More in the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno, in for Dr. Savage. Next, this is the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
the Savage Nation. I am Michael Del Giorno from Music City, USA, in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back Monday, but Spicer won't be. Spicer's out as press secretary. Anthony Scaramucci, and no relation to Father Guido Sarducci. Anthony Scaramucci and his communications director. You know, I dusted across that earlier. I do think it's probably a wise idea with the level of communication problems the White House is having to have somebody like that ahead of communications separate from press secretary, one that focuses on strategy and one that executes it. And the one that will execute it now is Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Here's Anthony Scaramucci on both changes.
But here's what I tell you about the president. He's the most competitive person I've ever met. Okay, I've seen this guy throw a dead spiral through a tire. I've seen him at Madison Square Garden with a top coat on. He's standing in the key and he's hitting foul shots and swishing them. Okay, he sinks 3-foot putts. I don't see this guy as a guy that's ever under siege. This is a very, very competitive person. Obviously, there's a lot of incoming that comes into the White House, but the president's a winner. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of winning.
You know, I was going to make the profound point that bringing in Anthony Scaramucci is going to get the messaging right. I mean, nobody's going to attack this White House unless they got facts, unless they got a real smoking gun, unless they got a real scandal, because this guy knows how to bring the hurt. And he's the only one in this entire entourage that has fought off his attack and ended it. But when his first statement is that Donald Trump's a fighter because he throws a good spiral and wears a top coat, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe I'm being a little too optimistic. We'll search for better cuts coming up. You know what, Robert, if you could just talk in my ear, I forgot what this hard break time is. I think it's 28:20. See, I got a memory like an elephant. But anyway, that's the Scaramucci quote. I do think I think that's what this does symbolize, though, that Anthony Scaramucci is a fighter and a winner. And I don't think it's so much as reward for how he handled the attacks on him that led to devastation at CNN, but as much as the type of person he is. And maybe that's what we need to be talking about rather than have a real fighter and a real winner. And I think for some of you out there that are frustrated and want to see the president discern the difference between nonsense and real stuff and punch back hard and go on the offensive, I think the exit today of Spicer and the addition of Scaramucci is a sign we're heading in that direction. More in a moment.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever it costs, I'll do it. Yeah. Del Savage. Thanks. I'm legally changing my name to Michael Del Savage. It's just easier when I fill in. This is the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno, in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back on Monday. Don't forget to pick up a copy of his New York Times bestseller, Trump's War, more important now than ever. I love the Washington Post. They don't take time to. There are sore. I don't really mind sore losers as much as sore winners. My mom used to always say, "Show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser." But the Washington Post couldn't resist with their story already out. If it's any consolation to former White House press secretary Sean Spicer, his 182-day stint at the lectern may have been short, but it was not the shortest ever. Of the 31 press secretaries dating back to former President Herbert Hoover, 5 press secretaries have had even shorter tenures. Oh, there's Roger Tubby, 33 days. Jake Seward, 111 days. Jonathan Daniels, 19 days. Gerald Terhorst, 30 days under Jerry Ford. James Baker, 69 days. He was shot. But it doesn't take them long to jump right in. But Spicer is out, and that's the big story. There's a shakeup in communications. That was alluded to when we woke up this morning, and then it plays out. So Anthony Scaramucci is in as the communications director, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be taking the place of Sean Spicer as press secretary. Does that solve the messaging problems? Listen, I'll be the first to look you in the eye filling in for Michael Savage, and I feel pretty confident Michael would agree. No, you're not going to solve the communication problems, the distraction problems, the stepping in it problems of this White House until you solve it at the top. But getting Scaramucci closer to the top, and if there is this moving away, Michael wrote a piece in WorldNet Daily, and again, I don't want to dissect a piece that you can go online. That's reading for the blind. But I agree with Michael from the standpoint of I think this president is best when he trusts himself. I really do. You know, I mean, we saw that with some early mistakes in this presidency, with the travel ban is a great example. You know, that the president knew that this was about national security. This wasn't about Muslims. This was about dangerous terrorist sponsoring nations and controlling who is allowed to come into this country and just how far we want to raise the risk level or threaten innocent citizens. And he knew it was right. He should have stuck to his guns, but he listened to his attorneys, and then he ends up losing in court and then eventually ultimately winning in the Supreme Court. But while he was here in Nashville speaking to a group, he said, I never should have listened to these people. I never should have made alterations to it. And now that I'm going to go back and repeal it, I'm going to go back and repeal my original vision. And I thought to myself, this could be a great turning moment for President Trump. Yes, surround yourself with smart people. Have great advisors. I love when the president surrounds himself with generals and gets really good information. But for goodness sakes, you got to know who you are. You're the president of the United States. You have the ultimate bully pulpit. And the game is that, unlike what you might think, in an interview situation, the interviewer does not control it. The interviewee does, because they control the answers. And if they don't have them, they lose control. They always blame the person that asked the questions, but the blame belongs with them and their lack of understanding. So I don't ever have a problem with Donald Trump. I mean, sometimes he doesn't communicate in the most effective way on issues, and it makes me feel like, I'll be blunt, that he has spent time in a room with smart people who really understand the topic and the issue and the problem and the question and the real answer and the real solution. And he gets it and he's ready to do it. He doesn't quite know how to explain it as well as they did. I can't be the first person that has felt that way. But he is at his best when he's true to his soul and when he's only listening to himself. And whether it was shared with him or he discovered it himself, he knows it's the right path forward. I still think Donald Trump has to figure out how to communicate with the citizens of his country. Now, I will not argue that I think that there are some real silver linings here. I mean, Anthony Scaramucci is one guy that got messed with and ended it quick, right? I mean, that was a first-round knockout. And there ain't nobody that wants to be next in line to fight with this guy. So for a White House, quote unquote, as they like to say, under siege, under attack, well, I think this is the right guy to be communications director. And quite frankly, I think it's a full-time job to just be on the second floor and be the director of how this White House communicates with its nation. And I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a terrific replacement to Sean Spicer. So that's that story as we move forward. We started the day, of course, with the Washington Post and the New York Times reporting last night that President Trump's attorneys are investigating aides to special counsel Robert Mueller. This is a way of pushing back, going on the offensive. And what are they looking into? Trump's legal team looking for ways to undercut Mueller's role as they start looking into a Miss Universe Oh, my gosh, what a smoking gun. The Miss Universe pageant being held in Moscow. Well, that proves there's collusion. A Russian purchased an apartment in one of his buildings. Well, that I don't know about anybody else, but that and the absurdity of comparing it, as I did earlier, to Fast and Furious with the Obama administration. Or how about the targeting of Tea Parties and patriot grassroots conservative Republican organizations? Targeting them for harassment by the IRS and audits. To do what? Intimidate. Not giving them their nonprofit status. Why? To silence them. Hassle them, intimidate them, stop their effectiveness so that what happened in a midterm election in 2010 couldn't happen in a re-election in 2012. You want collusion, you want scandal, you want interrupting and tampering with an elective process? That's it, Obama. And by the way, notice I didn't say Lois Lerner. And notice I didn't say Stephen Miller. And what about Doug Shulman? That's who was the IRS commissioner when all this was going on. It goes straight to the White House, and a new 7,000 document dump probably proves it, and the IRS won't turn it over. And that's a story from March of this year. And many of these groups and people are still being hassled. That's a real scandal. Benghazi, that was Hillary's baby. And you got rid of Gaddafi, who was complying, no angel, but complying, and you got an al-Qaeda hotbed. After your president said bin Laden's dead and the war is over. And dating back to early August, you have Ambassador Stevens sending email after email, writing in his diary, later found by a CNN journalist, begging for, this place is crawling with al-Qaeda. They're going to attack the compound. We do not have security. We need help. Never arrived. And coordinated with the 9/11 anniversary, attacked. He was killed, along with 2 others. And what is Hillary? What is Susan Rice? What did they all go on television and tell you? It was a YouTube video. Spent millions of your dollars apologizing. State Department money apologizing in Muslim nations for a lie. Lied to families on the tarmac. I mean, when you think of real scandals that we've ignored, compared to this nonsense. A Russian bought an apartment in one of his buildings? Oh, my. You got to be kidding me. And it's a joke. And it really reminds me of, pardon this, but a music analogy. I'm always somebody that's in it for the words. My wife and daughters, they give me a hard time over this because they think all my music is sad. I'm not really into the feeling as much as the message. I mean, I'm really hearing what they're singing about. I'm following it. I'm in it for the lyric. Now, see, a lot of people are just in it for the feeling, for the melody, for the beat. Now, they got the words in their head, and they'll sing along, but they don't have the faintest idea. There's no connection between them and the words. They're just into the beat, into the feel, because they have no understanding. Well, I've done that from time to time. I always use the Benny Mardotis example. I must have sang Into the Night a million times, from 15 years old to 24 years old. One day I'm in my car at 25 years old. I'm just jamming along to the drum and the intro, and then he comes on. And for some reason, this time when I sang it, it stuck. She's just 16 years old. And leave her alone is what they say. Surrounded by fools who don't know what love's for. This guy's wanting to have sex with an underage girl. I've never listened to that song again. But isn't that like the alternate universe that we're living in? That the media can just get on television. Oh, Donald Trump got a call to meet. It was to get, like that's a scandal. Let me tell you something. There are school board races that meet with people. And it's simply for the purposes of getting opposition research. I mean, the notion that somebody would call you and say, I have some opposition research, some things that'll really make your opponent look terrible. I don't want to hear it. No, they always meet. In this particular case, this person had nothing but questions about adoption. To which Donald Trump Jr. said, my father's not in public office yet. You need to talk to people in public office. Now, if he gets in public office, come talk to him. Then they came out one day, I think it was Monday, or was it last Friday? I don't know. The days rolled together. And that's the new big scandal. It turns out that at a G20 dinner, not in private, there wasn't some second secret meeting with Putin. Everybody with their spouse was at this G20 dinner. And they happened to put the first lady next to Putin. So eventually when the meal's over, the president with his Japanese interpreter, because he was sitting with a Japanese leader, he didn't go there to talk to Putin. He went there because his wife was there. And then they had a conversation. Now that's a scandal. That points to it. Now, never mind what we've ignored after 8 years of Obama and a candidacy of Hillary Rodham Clinton that was never investigated, never convicted, never learned from. Because if nothing else, that would be your view of what collusion really looks like, what scandal really looks like, what interfering with an election really looks like. I mean, I always laugh just at the surface. Are you kidding me? Your president, Barack Hussein Obama, tried to tamper with an election in Israel to get Bibi Netanyahu unelected. Why weren't you outraged at that? If meddling in elections is what you're so afraid of and must find the answers to and throw everybody involved behind bars and ensure it never happens again, doesn't that outrage you? How about the targeting of the Tea Party groups? That was to control the outcome of a 2012 presidential election by silencing these grassroots organizations and controlling get out to vote. That was so you didn't lose in 2012 like you lost the midterm in 2010. And it goes beyond Lerner. In fact, it goes all the way to the Oval Office. I mean, if you were honest, you'd be as outraged about that, wouldn't you? Let alone if you're really following the crazy, stupid bouncing ball. Am I really to believe for 1 second that this is what we've gotten to? Oh, a Russian bought one of his apartments. They had the Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. He was at a G20 dinner and had another meeting he didn't tell us about. In front of every G20 leader and their spouse. Because his wife was seated next to Putin. I mean, you got to be like those morons. You got to be like me, the moron. Singing along with, no offense to Benny Mardones, but take the analogy without the crucifixion if you can. How many years did I sing along with that song? But one day I sang it, just like I sang it a million other times, and I caught what I was saying. When will America wake up? I don't know the analogy, and I'm not the communications director that's going to solve all the problems for this administration. But, I mean, at some point, it does even go beyond Donald Trump. Because you got to communicate to people who are ignorant, people who are apathetic, people who are just dancing along and feeling something, and they're not even listening to the words that they're singing, let alone them registering, let alone them having the moral ability to discern. How the heck? I used to say this all the time when Obama was in office. That guy could get up and speak a lie in 15 seconds, and then I got to take 2 hours to explain why it was a lie. It gets exhausting. But I do think Scaramucci, step in the right direction. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, if she's on the same page as Scaramucci and the president, well, that's better than Spicer. But ultimately, the solution is Donald Trump, the president, communicating with his people more effectively, more consistently, and winning hearts and minds. Because he's got the truth on his side. It is about the security of our people. It is about we're a sovereign nation, and we have a right to decide who comes into our country and who doesn't. We have a right to enforce our laws. We have a right to celebrate our culture, our exceptionalism. And that doesn't mean that everybody else stinks. It just means this is where we are. And we do have a right to make America great again and prosper and heal the economy and create jobs. But you're not going to ultimately solve the messaging until you solve the ultimate messenger, Trump. More on the Savage Nation next.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
I am Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee, in for Dr. Savage. And, of course, the big story today is communication shakeup at the White House. Scaramucci's in, communications director. Spicer steps down, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders takes over. Now, as I always say, the sooner they get their communication skills right, including the president in the White House, the better. All the better so we can focus on the dumb things they're saying on the left. Enter MSNBC host Joy Reid.
We have a Republican Party that not only at its base is becoming Putinite, pro-Putin. You're seeing this for a lot of reasons, the alt-rights, for these sort of weird sort of white nationalist reasons that feel he's advancing white Christianity, whatever it is. Russia is an adversary of the United States, wants to dismantle our influence in Europe. Trump seems to agree. He seems to agree that we should have less influence in Europe, that we should detach ourselves from the NATO alliance, that we should even dismantle our own cybersecurity and make ourselves more vulnerable to Russia, make ourselves more vulnerable to their influence. It's shocking to see a Republican president essentially capitulate to almost everything Vladimir Putin could possibly want.
That's it. At the by the way, I don't even think I am a Republican anymore. I mean, if they would live their platform, I would be. But at the base of the Republican Party are pro-Putin, Putinite, Russian worshipers. And what is white Christianity? And is that really what the president's thoughts on NATO were? Yeah, the sooner we stop talking stupid from the White House, the more we can focus on some of the stupid talk, especially on MSNBC. That's where I'll pick it up next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. I am Michael Del Giorno, filling in for Dr. Savage once again, and honored to be doing so. He'll be back on Monday. The phone number, 855-400-7282, 855-400-SAVAGE. And the big story, communications shakeup at the White House. Enter Anthony Scaramucci, who is in as communications director, and exit Sean Spicer. He's out. And Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders steps in now. So does this solve all the communication problems of the White House? I doubt it. You're not going to solve that until the president starts communicating consistently and better. But you do get somebody at the helm like Anthony Scaramucci, which may also represent, by the way, the president moving a little bit away from Reince Priebus and more towards inner circles of New York that he's comfortable with and tough fighters and toughs. I mean, this is a president that does respect success. There's no mistake about it. I mean, whenever he talks about it, he's a very successful man. It's a very successful business. He's a winner. And, that's Anthony Scaramucci. So he's communications director, and I do think it could be a step away and towards trusted New York voices. It shows they may be going on the offensive. I mean, here's a guy that handled the attacks very well, smacked CNN hard. They almost imploded over it. He showed he knows how to handle these senseless attacks and win. So that's certainly what the White House needs. I think ultimately what it needs is the president himself to communicate and win some hearts and minds and stop saying stupid things or tweeting them. And I said heading into this hour to set this up, and the sooner we stop saying dumb, unproductive, distracting, or really self-sabotaging things, the more we can focus on the dumb things the left is saying. And there's no better example than MSNBC host Joy Reid. I don't know what Joy's expertise is. Her degree's in documentary filmmaking. All right. So I know she's a liberal, and I know she's a Democrat, and I doubt she knows many or interacts with many Republicans. I don't think she was using our platform to make this statement. And I think it really is, quite frankly, much more of a reflection of her than it is the Republican Party. But using my analogy from the first hour, we're more into the beat, we're more into the melody, and nobody's listening to the words of songs, so everybody just kind of dances along in ignorance. But if you're into the lyric, if you're into meaning, this makes no sense at all. Or does it? I mean, she's been preoccupied with race her entire life. Maybe that explains some of it. So let's go line by line. Here's MSNBC host Joy Reid giving us all a lecture on the Republican Party.
We have a Republican Party that not only at its base is becoming Putinite, pro-Putin. You're seeing this for a lot of reasons, the alt-rights, for these sort of weird sort of white nationalist reasons. They feel he's advancing white Christianity, whatever.
Hit pause. We have a Republican Party that not only at its base is becoming Putinite, pro-Putin. I am considered, I don't go by labels. I am a child of God, first and foremost. I'm a follower of Christ, the biblical Christ, as Savior and Lord. So I do a lot of dying to my nature and a lot of obedience to his nature. And then I am most defined by being son of Bob and Joan, husband of Andrea, and father to Anna, Alex, and Nicholas. But the world's big on labels. So by worldly labels, I am what you would call an evangelical conservative Republican. It's like 8th, 9th, 10th on my list of things, but that's what I am. And less and less a Republican every day. Now, we have messenger problems in the Republican Party. Our message is proven. Whether it was John F. Kennedy, even though he was a Democrat, and the stances he took, whether it was Ronald Reagan, whether it was this recession and that recovery, proven through time. We have things in our platform. The Republican Party, in its broadest stroke, stands for ultimately less government. Like our founding fathers, the biggest thing I want from government is nothing. To get out of my life and stay out of it. Other than a military to protect our nation and our way of life and our well-being. I really don't need them. I don't want them to mess with me. I don't need them for retirement. All they do is fleece me for Social Security with the promise of maybe seeing 70% of pennies someday. I'll handle my own retirement. Stay out of my health care. I'll bust my butt. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to, but I will provide a secure, safe place for my wife and children to live. I will provide for their education. I will feed them, and I will provide their health care needs. If you would just stay out of it, you'd save me a lot of hassle. So Republicans believe in less government, or the original intent of government. They believe that we're a land of opportunity, not a promise of entitlement. And the promises are life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. So we are ultimately for less government. We stand for pro-strong defense and peace through strength. But I've been around a lot of Republicans. In meetings, on the radio, off air, sitting around a lounge chair in my house. We are not all secretly talking about how great Putin is. In fact, more and more of us aren't even Republican anymore. And we've kind of come to the conclusion, like George Washington, parties are nowhere in the Constitution. And they have certainly gone beyond their usefulness today. So I don't know where she gets this, that Republicans at the base are Putinite, pro-Putin. And then she even makes that ridiculous assumption. Now, if we're talking about narrative documentaries on the environment, maybe she picked something up at Harvard. Maybe she picked up something from her husband. I don't know what in her background makes her an expert on Republicans or theology, but here she goes. Not only are we all in the Republican Party at our base becoming more Putinite, more pro-Putin, and for lots of reasons. The alt-right, for this sort of weird white nationalist reasons. Now that's a new thing, by the way. White nationalists.
Russia is an adversary of the United States, wants to dismantle our influence in Europe. Trump seems to agree. He seems to agree that we should have less influence in Europe, that we should detach ourselves from the NATO alliance, that we should even dismantle our own...
Pause. That has nothing to do with what Donald Trump said. First of all, there was a lot of reasons why we did NATO in the past that made great sense. Some of them still make great sense today, and then some of them haven't necessarily made sense. But for the most part, not everybody has fulfilled the agreement and paid their fair share. Now, by the way, at that point, did President Trump at some time say, I think we should pull out of NATO? Maybe in the art of the deal, in the negotiating style, he made that threat. I wouldn't have. But he stood by Poland. He stood by sanctions in Russia. He bombed in Syria. If somebody wants to call up, the phone number is 855-400-SAVAGE. I'd like to know one thing this president done that's been pro-Russian in action, because I haven't seen it. Now, I saw Obama cut and run on defense systems in Europe and never return and leave our European allies vulnerable. I just haven't seen Trump do it. And don't even get me started on what advancing white Christianity is. Now, I understand there's cultural Christianity. Listen, you just had a president for 8 years that was a liberation theologist. You know what that is? Trinity Church, liberation theology? It's liberation from white oppression. Jesus rarely ever comes up. And the loyalty is not even to this continent. And the gospel message is race. Now, maybe that's her background. I don't know. And by the way, I can't imagine that there's not a lot of white Democrats caught up in white Christianity, for whatever that is, in her racial obsession. For God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten son. Not Republicans, not whites, for God so loved the world. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life, and no one, doesn't matter if you're black or white, red or yellow, nobody comes to the Father except through me. As I said, this entire statement is so ignorant. This entire statement is so biased, so agenda-laced, so ignorant and moronic. I think it only reveals her heart, and it's a dark one, more than it says anything. But no, the Republican Party is not pro-Putin or pro-Russia, and I don't know any Republicans that don't see Russia as an adversary. There's one last part to her stupid statement. Let's finish it off.
Cybersecurity and make ourselves more vulnerable to Russia, make ourselves more vulnerable to their influence. It's shocking to see a Republican president essentially capitulate to almost everything Vladimir Putin could possibly want.
I can't think of one thing this president has capitulated to. And why? I mean, again, you know, I know this woman has a racial chip on her shoulder. I know that, you know, it'd be one thing if I was telling you I'm a doctor and I went to Johns Hopkins University. You go to Johns Hopkins, you're not just a doctor, you're like one of the best. I'm an attorney and I went to Harvard University. She went to Harvard and studied documentary making. I mean, I understand the racial chip on her shoulder, but I don't know of any white Christianity that exists. I do know of a color Christianity, liberation theology, and I just lived 8 years of it, and she worshiped that president, so maybe she's making some revelations about black Christianity by attacking white Christianity. But no, Republicans aren't sitting around talking about how great Putin is, how wonderful Russia is, and how white Christianity is. And maybe one of the producers in Dallas can whisper in my ear, I don't recall the president wanting to dismantle our cybersecurity and make ourselves more vulnerable to Russia. That would be a very dramatic, loose interpretation. So, but my point is, the sooner we stop, saying stupid things, and the sooner we start staying on point, staying on message, winning hearts, winning minds, communicating effectively the truth, if you can possibly, to a nation so divided and ignorant, the better. And the more dumb statements like this will get attention and can be dissected. Because I'll tell you, one of the things about the parallel alternate universe we're living in right now, the Democrats aren't winning anything either. They may be winning the game of attacking and stymieing and all that. But there's only one person with worse approval ratings than Donald Trump. That's Hillary Clinton. And there is a party that still has no message or messenger. At least the Republicans still have a message. They're just searching for the right messenger. And that's the Democrat Party. They still don't have a candidate, a messenger, or a platform that anybody's buying. Joy Reid, I mean, it's tough not to make her the loser of the day. But the DNC chair, Tom Perez, is ready on deck to take a swing at it next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
I am Michael Del Giorno in for Dr. Savage on the Savage Nation. Phone number 855-400-7282, 855-400-SAVAGE. Want to get to David especially listening on KSFO next segment. But first, I want to get this in. If Joy Reid is certainly nominated for Loser of the Day and Ridiculous Comment of the Day, the DNC chair, Tom Perez, not far behind. Clip, please. 2.
The Republican leadership in Texas, they can't win the battle of ideas because their ideas are wrong for the vast majority of Texans. So what do? They pass a voter ID law. They engage in racial gerrymandering. Let's have a battle in the marketplace of ideas, and then let's work together to make sure that every single eligible voter can vote. But voter suppression, we have to acknowledge, is a staple in the Republican playbook. I know that because I had the privilege of heading up the Civil Rights Division, and we had to sue South Carolina, we had to sue Texas, North Carolina, so many other states. This is a staple. We can't win on the ideas, so let's make it harder to vote.
Oh, gosh. You know, we just lived a presidential election based on Hillary Clinton and identity politics. You do recall deplorables. Or what Trump said on a bus. Or equal pay for women. Or minimum wage that's already failed in Seattle. Or her service as a first lady, as a secretary of state, and getting off that chopper under sniper fire that never happened. And she's the most experienced, perfect resume to ever run for president because Bill told her that. Those are ideas. Let me give you the better example, the healthcare situation we're in right now. Can anybody even speak to to get to DNC Chair Tom Perez's point, that they're not even engaging in ideas? You can't win the battle of ideas, so you just suppress vote. What is the Democrats' response? Listen, this is why I said from the very beginning, I think Trump should continue with the deregulations, move right on to tax cuts. At this point, just get something done. Just let Obamacare die. Let the cause of death be Obama. But any Democrat that continues to just vote against anything the Republicans come forward with, there's enough infighting within the party. I think Dave's going to make some of that point. When you have the majority of the House and the Senate, you can't get anything done. And most of the things that have been killing it is you can't get all of your party on board. Because the party isn't listening to its base or its platform. The Republican Party by base and platform is still very conservative. That doesn't mean that's what's in Washington and playing a whole separate game behind the scenes. But the point is, Obamacare can't exist. It wasn't even designed to exist. But it is not sustainable. So any Democrat just saying, I can't think of, and I do this for a living, I don't know if you can. The Democrats have never come forward. We should all be looking each other in the eye, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and saying, Obamacare is unsustainable. What's your idea? No, we come out with a CBO report, this many will lose, premiums will go to this. Well, premiums are already too high. There's already millions not using it, and it is unsustainable. It's dying. I don't hear them with any ideas either. So DNC Chair Tom Perez, and don't even get me started on voter suppression. I show my ID every time I use my credit card. You know what? I thank the retailer. I don't resent them.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
A sea of voices, of ignorant masses and voices, and then there's a last bastion of truth, the Savage Nation. Honored to be filling in for Dr. Savage again. I'm Michael Del Giorno. Dr. Savage will be back on Monday. The phone number is 855-400-SAVAGE. Don't you love that quote from the DNC chair? I was in Texas this week. What a great example. I mean, the Republican leadership in Texas, they can't win the battle of ideas. Yeah, Texas is just in the throes. Illinois is under Democratic leadership. California under Democratic leadership. They're broke. They're bankrupt. Things are so rough in Texas right now. I mean, they don't have anything. They can't win in the battle of ideas. All they want to do is suppress the vote. Voter ID laws. Don't you love how the left always calls that suppression? Do you think there's a liberal sitting in Dillard's and they're getting ready to do their credit card, and the person says, may I see your identification? Are you trying to suppress my purchase? What? Are you trying to run me out of this department store by checking my ID? No, what do we all do? Oh, absolutely. I thank them. It may not have been me. I mean, how disingenuous is the left, right? They didn't care about the election being disrupted. They cared that their candidate didn't win. They're not equally outraged over the meetings and the dossier of a former British intelligence person. All they care about is it didn't work. And their person lost. I mean, if they really cared about vote, they would be as outraged over somebody voting with a dead person's name or somebody voting illegally as they would be any kind of Putin interference, wouldn't they? I mean, if they really cared about fair and accurate elections, their motive is revealed. I'm going to do a story coming up about O.J. Simpson because I think O.J.'s parole hearing revealed to me more than anything, and there's been things, more than anything, his guilt in a double murder. I cannot wait to share that with you coming up. But the Democrats and the left do that every day. Because if you are still searching for some smoking gun between Russia and America that doesn't exist, that you're willing to stymie the first 6 months of this year the way you have, well, you would care about somebody voting in the name of a dead person or an empty lot or voting multiple times. It's just disingenuous. What a joke. I'm surrounded by morons today, and I just can't find the passion to really do these stories. They're just so moronic. I think Dave's going to make a great point. So, by the way, I've come to the conclusion. Fall is my favorite season, especially in the summer. Think about that. For most of us, we're dying in heat. And now here comes Dave in San Francisco, where I'm sure the weather is perfect. Dave, welcome into the Savage Nation.
Hey, how's it going? I'm actually in Philadelphia. I'm listening on the KSFO stream.
Oh, well, that ruins it.
What I wanted to say was that this woman, Joy, she's not wrong. The only thing that she's wrong about is her saying that the Republicans have adopted our platform. I'm a member of the alt-right. I pay dues. I'm an identitarian. And, you know, we love Putin. He's fantastic. He's doing great things for his country, becoming more nationalistic. He's been cracking down on homosexual propaganda. These are all very good things. He's promoting Christianity. We've seen the country go from basically completely atheistic to over 90% Orthodox Christianity, and these are really, really wonderful things. But to conflate that and say that the Republican Party is having the same platform, they don't. Because the Republicans don't understand that all of these minority groups share what's called in-group preferences. They favor themselves. Black people favor themselves more than they favor whites. And so do Mideasterners and Jewish people. They all play as a tribe. They play with a very strong sense of their own nationality and their own heritage. Whereas white people, we don't particularly tend to share those same in-group preferences. What we do have is a desire for smaller government and for more freedom. And what's going on right now is, in fact, an assault on whiteness and Christianity, which are two things that we see happening, especially in Europe, and it's just in the beginning stages here. So she's right with what she says. She's wrong with who she's...
Dave, only because I can tell you're smart, do you want to explain the difference between confuse and conflate, or do you want me to?
Well, I guess conflating would be taking two different things and putting them together to make it seem like there's some sort of an association with them. Being confused is just being a flat-out idiot.
Well, it combines two separate things into some new thing that doesn't really actually exist, and it's a great word. Couple of things. Thanks for the call, Dave, because the way they have the microphone set up here, it's very difficult for us to have a conversation because it'll automatically lower you. I don't disagree with anything you said. I think some things went maybe perhaps a little bit too far. I mean, if in fact we were to, do I believe that whites in particular and Christians have come under in a cultural war attack? Yes. But you got to go beyond that. There's multiculturalism, which is being worshipped. There is a false cultural Christianity that has been sold and bought. And so, you know, it's almost like it's not enough to say white. It's not enough to say Christian. You know, I'm to the point now when it comes to somebody claiming to be a Christian, I don't even know what the test is. I tell people I have to be this specific. I'm a Galatians 2:20 Christian. I don't know what you are, because there are so many cultural Christianities and versions. So I think probably the safest way to say it is true biblical Christianity versus a cultural Christianity. I mean, we have a lot of subgroups. We have churches now capitulating to the homosexual movement and removing the nature of God and portions of Scripture. At that point, it's not conflated anymore, and it's not confused anymore. It's a false religion, and it's not even Christianity in its norm. It sounds like we're hateful. It sounds like we're bigoted. And it sounds like we're attacking, but we're not. We're the one under attack. And in the courtroom of public opinion, or you put me filling in for Michael Savage, and you make the topic about marriage between a man and a woman, well, I'm going to take sides with biblical marriage as it's always been, the natural form of marriage and procreation and so on. But that doesn't mean I'm anti-gay. Most days I walk around and don't even think about homosexuals beyond, wow, that must hurt. Seriously. But they push and they push and they attack. You're playing really a new tolerance game. This is where you're trying to make a cultural war politics, and it's not. Politics is trying to play and take advantage of a cultural war. To the point of your logic, and it's great, I really don't see what I would say at some point in your logic, isn't white evangelical or Christian a subgroup? Because it is. And this is where I think we got to go beyond the identity politics to what we all have in common. I don't want to launch into John F. Kennedy. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures. But this goes back to the messaging. You know, there's a huge attack this week from the Wall Street Journal, and it was on healthcare, and it's mocking the Republicans, and it's saying, you know, you've had all this time, give us control of the House, and we'll repeal it. Give us control of the Senate, you know, and we'll defund, you know, all the amnesty things and so on and so forth. And then they get control and they can't do anything. And so what it's basically saying is, you know, you're not as conservative as you thought. That's what Republicans are discovering. No, I think, you know, the party's platform is what condemns them, not the fractures or the portions of what make up their party. Because I don't care whether you call yourself an evangelical and happen to be white, Republican, or something else. That's your party's platform. And there was a time that platforms mattered. And the candidates literally were signing a pact to carry out that platform. And so the fact that we now have personality politics, not just partisan, personality politics. You know what grosses me out the most about the Republican Party? When I go speak at rake and dinners, when I'm at the grassroots level, and they fawn over these elected people. Now, everybody at that small little town or community or county meeting have all the same values I do, all the same rules for the values and beliefs I do, all the same priorities, celebrate all the things in the party platform I do. But boy, you get that elected official in and they're just at the teat. They're just worshiping. And this moron has done nothing but go to Washington and do everything opposite of everybody's values in that room, the priorities of everybody in that room. I live in Tennessee. We have two of the most despicable senators, Corker and Alexander. Now, I say despicable. If they would just run as Democrats, win as Democrats, and lead and vote and serve as Democrats as they have, I wouldn't say it's despicable. But for the great Tennesseans who believe in faith, family, and country that I know, two really despicable people in the United States Senate to represent them. We got a governor in Haslam. Oh, my gosh, is this guy an empty suit? Doing the agenda and work of the left, all in the name of evangelical republicanism. How do they get away with it? Marsha Blackburn, Diane Black. We got one really stellar person in Washington, D.C. His name is Scott Desjardins. And the Republican Party's done nothing but attack and crucify him. How does that happen? I don't know that it's subgroups. And I don't know that we're finding out that the party isn't as conservative as I thought. Our representation is out of touch with our platform first and foremost and their constituents secondarily. And nobody will get the hell rid of them. Listen, I think the story of John McCain is explainable and tragic. Now these Senate hearings make sense to me. But, that's the game in Washington. Nobody leaves. They don't leave until they're toe tagged. Now, I'm sitting scratching my head, and I wish John McCain the best, and I speak against this tumor, and I pray for healing. But at 80 years old, with one of the most aggressive brain tumors you could have, with one of the lowest mortality rates you could find, I hope he's just being positive. I'll be back. Because if deep down, he wants to be back, why? When are you ever done? You're 80 years old. That's how you want to spend your last moments? Go fishing with your kids. So we have career politicians, and it's about them and the games they and their colleagues play. And you allowing it. Listen, your founding fathers counted on you being moral, and you're not. Counted on you being involved and active, and you're not. Counted on you vetting all these candidates. Consider running yourself. And certainly holding them accountable once they're elected. And we're not. Listen, I'll play the partisan politics game of rhetoric when we get real Republicans back in office. I'll claim failure when real Republicans doing the platform actually fail. No, the Republican Party is as conservative as we thought. Just the ones that we sent to office clearly are not and lack true leadership and wisdom. But the other side, they don't have any solutions either. They haven't even offered one up. All they got is criticism and attacks. You know what I wish Donald Trump would do? Well, for one, stop tweeting and shut up. Then say, guess what? Nobody can decide. I'm moving on. But for America, I got news for you. This isn't me trying to take away something that's great. It's dying. And when it's dead, you, along with your Democrat representatives and senators, come see me. And let's all sit down and try to create something that can work. But they haven't issued one single solution. As if Obamacare is sustainable when it's not. As if the premiums are low when they're not. As if the product is good when it's not. I feel sorry for you, America. You're caught up in a political game. And both sides are virtually equally guilty, left and right. You better get beyond left and right. You better get beyond black and white. You better get beyond gay and straight and get to what we all have in common. And that is life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. But usually, I'll just warn you, it's the people playing the divisive games that have the problem, not the ones they're attacking. More of your calls, 855-400-SAVAGE, and I want to move on to my favorite story of the day because I need to do something I believe in today. Otherwise, they may never ask me back. The Savage Nation continues next, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Lower it down so fast. This rejoin music reminds me of when I was a kid and my father would be banging on the door. Michael, lower that music down. That's the kind of music was blaring in my room. You proud of me now, Dad? Now it's blaring nationwide on the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno in for Dr. Savage. Honored as always. And Michael will be back on Monday. Phone number 855-400-SAVAGE. You've seen these memes before, right? Or, somebody will email it to you. Put every member of Congress on Obamacare, and guess what? Suddenly people wouldn't be Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives, and they'd solve it. Why? Because they got crummy health care, high premiums, high out-of-pocket, a bad product that no one could possibly use. They sometimes you've got to understand, politicians love these things, and they don't want them to go away. They leverage them for votes. Imagine what the debates in America would be like if we just got rid of both parties. And it didn't matter what your color was, what your religion was, where you lived, where you were on the socioeconomic plane. We were just Americans, solving security for Americans, solving job opportunities for Americans, solving education for Americans. Why, God forbid, we might become one nation under God, indivisible. Bob's listening on WABC in New York, New York. Welcome to the Savage Nation, Bob.
Oh, hey, brother. Mike, that was a great speech. Listen, I applaud you, brother. That only a real man rooted in Christ Jesus can have the wisdom to speak like that. You're a beautiful brother in Christ. Keep up the good work, Mike. But I gotta tell you
the only problem is, Bob, I don't remember what I said.
The Holy Spirit was speaking through you, brother. Let me say something. Remember with the crowd said to Ben Franklin, "What have ye wrought, Ben?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it."
If you can keep it.
If you can keep it. And our source is God. And if we all turn to God, we will have our country back. That is.
Thanks for the call, Bob. I really don't like the way this lowers them down and you can't talk it together. But anyway, make a long story short, yeah, it's a republic if you can keep it. And we continue to try to find ways to keep it without God, without our founding fathers' intent, thinking we're somehow wiser than our founding fathers and our Heavenly Father. And then we continue rooted in chaos, lost, wondering if we go left or right. You might want to go up. We'll get to Andrew's call, and then my two favorite topics of the day I've been dying to talk about next on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
I once won the Macaroni Award, not to be confused with the Marconi Award. I am Michael Del Giorno in Nashville, Tennessee. I am sweating in the heat, but honored to be filling in for Dr. Savage, coast to coast on the Savage Nation. Dr. Savage will be back on Monday. That's the good news for you. Don't forget, over the weekend, you can check out, if you haven't taken the time to read it, and we're in the midst of it, don't forget his New York Times best-selling book, Trump's War, more important now than ever. And, of course, you can always sign up for the Savage Nation newsletter at michaelsavage.com. Phone number throughout the show, same as when Michael's here, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282, which is where we find Matt listening on KSFO. Welcome to the Savage Nation, Matt.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. So people know me by Millennial Matt, and I just wanted to sort of speak on the importance of memeing in regard to conveying a conservative message to the younger generation through cartoonish imagery. Are you familiar with memeing?
Of course I am, Matt. I thought you were going to get to your point. They have a balance set on this. If I talk, it erases you, so I don't know what to do other than shut up and wait for you to finish your thought. I don't think I got a meme for that, Matt. And I know education has become indoctrination. And I know, listen, let me tell you something about how bankrupt young people are today. You know what, I'm going to sound old when I say this, but I don't remember the guy's name. Robert, you may have to jump in. Lincoln Park was the rock group he was in. And Bennington, yeah, but I forgot his first name. It was... Yeah, Chester Bennington killed himself. And I listen, but I don't know why I listen to satellite radio so much. I think, kind of like a doctor probably doesn't come home and watching My 600-Pound Life or Monster Inside Me or medical dramas like Chicago Hope. If I listen to a local radio station, I'm like a guy that runs restaurants trying to eat at a local restaurant. I can't enjoy it. It's just, I'm listening to everything, critiquing everything. And one of the things about satellite radio, or as it used to be, nobody was talking. Everybody just shut up and played whatever it is I tuned in to hear. More and more I'm finding, listening to Simply Sinatra, I'm hearing less Sinatra. Now, I don't know who's programming Simply Sinatra, but it might be a good idea to play a little Frank, just now and then. MTV, I got a novel idea. Play a freaking song, will you? So, but I was listening, and I happened to be listening to Hits 1. And this guy kills himself. And here comes these young disc jockeys. They're just rattling on at a high speed because I don't know if they're jacked up on coffee or Coke, but they just can't stop talking so fast. And they've got nothing. I mean, nothing. I will say this for a local radio station in Nashville. This guy's on CHR Radio. He was very mature about it. He addressed the tragedy straight on, delivered the story to the listeners, and encouraged them. If you're ever feeling unloved, if you're ever feeling out of answers, if you're feeling like you can make a decision to end your life, but you can never take it back, why not talk to somebody? He was giving the 800 number for counseling. All right, that was at least, fundamentally at least responsible. But, you should have heard these people on satellite. My 11-year-old daughter was laughing at them. Oh, man, it's like awful. And I heard like the maid found the body. Oh, my gosh, can you imagine? This is so awful. Well, his friend died and he sang at his funeral. And, this is the birthday of his friend. Oh, and they had nothing. Nothing. They spend their lives living this fake social media life, celebrating and perpetuating. We had a huge story today. 5 teenagers. A guy's 31 years old. He's drowning. And they're just filming it with their phones. They're laughing, mocking this guy. It doesn't dawn on any of them to live life in the moment. Go get help. Help this man. Simple human notions of do unto others. If I was drowning, would I want to see a bunch of people filming, laughing, mocking? Come on, man, swim. This guy can't swim. The dude's drowning. They're just filming it. Now, listen, I'm a parent of 3 kids. Every day I experience that feeling. Nick, stop saying that. You do not use words like that. Well, you did the other day when you stubbed your toe. Failed. How collectively have we failed? As a culture, as a country, that a 31-year-old could be drowning, and all we can think to do instinctively is film it, let alone laugh and mock it like it's some kind of cartoon, because that's what we're raising. A generation that doesn't understand purpose, meaning, creator, creation, sacredness of life. How lack of purpose leads to empty chases, empty results. You can have everything, money, everything that it buys, fame and fortune. Oh, they'll perpetuate, they'll celebrate, they'll participate in this whole notion that you can eat, drink, and be merry and do drugs and have sex and all that, like it's some kind of a great game. And then when people have nothing and they take their life, they have nothing to offer, no understanding, no comfort. I'll give you another example. I used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 20 years. It was a tragedy, and I can't even begin to speculate what happened. But a mother's coming back from Falls Creek, which is a Christian retreat center. She's got her son, his friends, some other kids in the car. And just no attempt to slow down, no attempt to stop or swerve, just plows full speed into a stopped 18-wheeler on an interstate. 2 dead, another brain dead. One was miraculously fine. The front of the car's gone. I don't know if she was texting, talking, watching. I don't know what she was doing. Just drove right into it. And then as the news story goes, well, obviously everybody at the school is upset. We've got all our counselors standing. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Let me get this straight. You're all at Falls Church at a Christian retreat. A tragedy happens, and the kids are going to godless schools to get their counseling and comfort? What about all these pastors? What are they doing? Aren't they the ones that's supposed to have the answers of why bad things happen to good people? Why tragedy happens? How a loving God could allow that? We're going to trust that to train secular counselors at the school? The first question I ask my wife is, are they doing year-round school now? Oh, no, but, because they all go to school there, they went ahead and went there for counseling. I'm like, oh, okay. More shepherdless sheep wandering through an empty, meaningless, eat, drink, and be merry lie. And when tragedy strikes, nobody has any understanding. Nobody has any comfort. Nobody has the common sense. I guess where I thought Matt was going, to make a long story short, I mean, he used that as his reason to try to get on. But if, in fact, you're trying to get on to say that memes are an effective way to communicate to millennials, you know what millennials really ultimately need to do? They need to grow up, learn up, live up. I shouldn't have to make something a cartoon to get Americans to understand it. You're about to be the generation in charge. Big stories today. Spizer's out. Was he forced out? Did he leave on his own? I don't know. What we do know is the White House is admitting something we knew before they admitted it. They have a communications problem. And so you might think this is a really big story. My problem is probably not. Because the communications and messaging problem can't be solved until you fix the president himself. I do this for a living every day, and nothing's jumping out of my brain of others making huge communication mistakes. No, most of the blunders of communication that either sidetrack. I mean, I've seen Donald Trump have the news cycle completely in his favor. If he would have just shut up a couple of weeks ago, the CNN CEO would have had to resign. I mean, they were imploding, and he jumps in with his mouth and gives the news cycle a new turn, a new twist. The stupid comments about Sessions, you know, it's as if sometimes they're self-sabotaging, sometimes they're not, but he certainly hasn't learned how to communicate with his citizens. He's the president of the United States. Start winning hearts, start winning minds, start controlling the focus. Now, they're going to go to certain networks to get fed what they want to hear. So there is a portion of America, and I don't know if it's 25%, I don't know if it's as high as 30%. They hate everything that this president stands for. They hate this man himself. They're delusional, and they'll go find somebody that'll say over and over again that they're right in thinking he's delusional and that he is the ultimate threat to humankind and our republic. I get that. And when I look at the ratings, I don't see a real erosion in viewership. What I see are new viewers, and we better understand who they are, and I see a shift in viewership. CNN has lost a lot of credibility and a lot of viewers. By the way, Fox is terrible and has gotten terrible. Now, I could, as a program director, fix Fox News tomorrow. All right, you lost two marquee talents. Megyn Kelly, I could never stomach her. But for a lot of people, she was a marquee talent and draw. And she's gone. Huge failure on NBC, but she's gone. Then the Bill O'Reilly scandal. That's your foundational personality, and he's gone. And you replaced one with a good person, and Tucker Carlson, and in the other, a bomb, the five. Which might say something to people don't want these group shows. I don't see them working for CNN. I don't think anybody should suggest that they're working. I mean, people like Rachel Maddow. People like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly. Like single persons hosting. So the five's been a huge failure. McCallum's not doing well. Tucker and Hannity are doing as well as ever. And Fox, of course, they've had some splintering too. I mean, this past election revealed to us Fox is an establishment Republican network. MSNBC is the Obama, far left, crazy left. And CNN is your biased Democrat network. So they've all taken dings. And some of this is explainable by programming, some of this is explainable by new viewership, and some of this is explainable by the shift. But what the narrative is trying to be, Rachel Maddow's through the roof, MSNBC is winning the cable war. That means Trump really is bad, and his message really is wrong, and nothing could be further from the truth. And I can't wait to prove it to you next on the Savage Nation. Hey, Mike, thanks for the worthless call. Way to represent the empty-suited millennials out there listening today.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Welcome back into the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee. Proud to be and honored to be filling in for Dr. Savage. Who'll be back on Monday. A couple of my favorite stories, and one's a pet peeve. I was in management and radio for over 2 decades, and I would have never made a programming decision based on one day. I wouldn't have made it on one rating period. I probably wouldn't have made it on a 4-book average. But there's nothing more inaccurate and that you could make an in general statement about than a single night's performance. Now, what are we seeing? There's a new trend. MSNBC is dominating the cable wars, and it's not even an accurate statement. Even in the total day, Fox News won and won big. In prime time, in this particular day that they're looking at, it was tied. And it's all very explainable. You got Rachel Maddow. Well, first of all, you have the implosion of CNN, so that's a shifting of audience. Instead of both having a 4, one now has a 3, and the other has like a 6. So that explains that. Everybody's into this fictitious false narrative. They're just into the dance, as we explained earlier. They're not listening to the words of the song. It doesn't matter that it's inference. It doesn't matter that there's no fact, there's no smoking gun, there's no truth. But hey, it's kind of like a good fiction. If it's a fun ride, and for me, I get more inspired and I learn more from documentaries. I like movies based on things that really happened. I naturally gravitate towards them. But what you have much is fiction, and people like it, and so they watch it. And so if all of them are funneling to this one channel, and they're getting fed the affirmation to what they're feeling. Now, they don't have words to that song, but to their feeling, well, then that explains the ratings. But it doesn't explain that makes it true, and that's how it's inferred. It was an interesting Pew research that was done. Americans are paying actually more attention to politics since Donald Trump. They're also more stressed out than ever. Just over half of those surveyed by Pew said that they're paying more attention to politics since Trump's victory. Only about 1 in 8 say they're paying less attention. So people are paying more attention. But who's paying attention? And do they understand it? Well, that's another problem. Women are especially likely to say that they're paying more attention to now. So those that were once disengaged are now watching more. In other words, they're more dupable too, which is frightening. About 6 in 10 said they found that talking about politics with people who disagree about Trump very stressful and frustrating. Why? You can't get them to stop regurgitating talking points or factless feelings. Donald Trump, having had Miss Universe in Moscow, is not proof that he colluded with Russia to steal an election. And by the way, there's more collusion that has come forward through the dossier against Trump than any, or certainly more proof of Obama trying to interfere with an Israeli election. But if they're enjoying it, they don't care that it's not real. Listen, I watch House of Cards. It's not real. So I get that. But this is the scariest part. 6 in 10 said they found talking about politics with people that disagree about Trump stressful and frustrating, compared to 35% who found the conversations interesting and informative. Isn't that a scary thought, that somebody is finding this false narrative with fake anchors, a trial of inference, factless, witnessless? They're finding it interesting and informative. You might find that America's biggest problem is we're not interested in the truth anymore. We don't believe in truth anymore. It's all just interesting and entertaining. What we don't realize is we're all on the same sinking ship if we don't wise up, grow up, find common ground, and solve this. I'll take on my final say issue next. It might even end up being our loser of the day on the Savage Nation. Stay with us.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
This is the Savage Nation. I'm Michael Del Giorno from Nashville, Tennessee. Proud and honored to be filling in for Dr. Savage, hopefully resting. He'll be back on Monday. Don't forget to get a copy of his New York Times bestseller, Trump's War, More Important Than Ever. And, of course, always sign up for or sign on to the Savage newsletter at michaelsavage.com. This one is a great example of what I was talking about moments ago, in that, at some point, there's walls between us. I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat. We don't have anything in common. We can't even communicate. We would almost need a translator to communicate, as opposed to we're Americans, and here's the problem. The problem is that some people either don't have jobs, so part of the solution has to be a robust economy with job opportunities. There are some people who don't have insurance because they don't have a job. There's some that don't have insurance because they're young and they don't care and they don't want it and they don't prioritize it. And they'll go to the emergency room, and if they can't make the payment for the bill, they'll go bankrupt. They don't have anything they really can lose. Can't do much about them. But we can do for the people that fall through the cracks that are, poor. We can find ways to care for them, because nobody in America dies in an alley with flies on their eyes. It just doesn't happen. All right. So the problem is we went from cost shifting at the hospital. I was in NICU in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was surrounded by babies, and I saw miracles happening, and all were sacred and valued lives. And I happen to know for a fact I was the only one paying. I was the only one with insurance. All right. So this notion that people don't receive health care is not true. So not everybody's paying for it. And the reason, some don't have it, they lost it or lost it temporarily when they shifted jobs. So maybe a nice, wise solution would be healthcare like life, like term life insurance that stays with you for life and isn't attached to your employer. That's a reasonable thing to discuss. The pools, and making sure you don't take the oldest and sickest and poorest and put them all in a pool and act like that you could have any kind of an actuary that makes sense. Maybe you could take everybody that's in an insurance program and pool them together. That's why the president's always talking about interstate lines and so on and so forth. But have a reasonable discussion. What's not reasonable is just to continue to vote against any repeal or replacement as if Obamacare is sustainable, because it's not. That's why I've encouraged the president from the beginning. Just let it die. Why would you jump in and want to be the cause of death? If they want to play obstructionism, fine, there it is. When somebody calls it and it's determined dead, then let's get everybody in a room and solve this and create something better. Because we have these walls, these partisan walls, and nobody's ever an American, and nobody ever stays on topic. Facts don't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Ideas don't matter. We just it's like we're in it for the fight. And that's what you see in that Pew Research. I'll give you an example of one. I don't know what Dr. Savage would do with this story, but I'm going to play you two sound bites. One is Newt Gingrich, and the other is Representative Castro. Why? Because they're both right. Now what do we do? See, it's not enough to say, well, I only want to hear what the right guy on the right said. I just want people to say things that I agree with. So when I talk to my friends, I can bring that up. Like, it's the argument that's more fun than the solution. And that's what's got us paralyzed. Let's start with Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich would be cut 3, guys.
The Mueller investigation has so many conflicts of interest. It's almost an absurdity. The law firm he comes from gave 99.81% of its donations to Hillary Clinton last year. That's right. 0.19 of 1% went to Donald Trump.
All right, point number 1. That's a conflict of interest. Maybe Mueller wasn't the best person to choose. It still should be investigated. In fact, I hope now the right wants this investigation to be done thoroughly and as quickly as possible so we can get on to the results of our election and this presidency for the good of this nation. But is it less likely and less possible and more tainted by partisanship? I mean, I don't think it's any small fact that the law firm he comes from gave 99.81% of its donations to Hillary Clinton, while 100% of the media that gave their donations and support to her are covering it. That's a conflict of interest. He's right. Cut 4.
The people that he's been hiring are all anti-Trump lawyers. Several of them have very bad records of hiding information from the defense. And one case was rebuked by the Supreme Court on a 9-0 vote. It's hard to understand why he would assemble such a team unless it was a deliberate effort to go after the president and the president's team.
Please don't lose faith in me. Trust me. This is all going to come back to our top story. Now, the fact that Newt Gingrich, a talking head, a former speaker, very familiar on Republicans-leaning networks, is saying this, it just sounds like a volley. And here's the other side of it, Representative Castro. Cut 5.
I think it's quite possible that financing is related. It may be that there was nothing illegal done at all, that the president is in the clear, as he says, but I also think that it's probably fair to investigate those things. To the extent that this is tied to the special counsel's investigation, then yes, I think that it is fair. And the president laid out his position there that he has no investments or nefarious deals with Russia, but there's certainly been news reports which really raise doubt about that statement and really bring it into question.
News stories, right? Let's take our cues from news stories because they're not inference, they're fact, right? I want to bash this because he does make one statement that is true. Donald Trump has said, I have no investments or nefarious deals with Russia. But Newt Gingrich is right, too. This particular chief investigator comes from a very biased firm, and he's hiring very anti-Trump lawyers. That's conflict of interest. That may not be the right people to carry this out or the right people to keep on point and focused. Now, you can read between the lines with Representative Castro. He doesn't see any smoking gun yet. He knows there's no fact. I think it's quite possible that financing is related. It may be that there was nothing illegal done at all. Well, that's what we're looking for, right? Illegal. But let's face it, the president did say, and, if you're following money, you ought to have a little latitude. In other words, they know this isn't arriving at a destination, but they'd like to be able to enjoy all the journey and lengthen this out as long as possible. But he does make a true statement. The president laid out his position that he has no investments or nefarious deals with Russia. That does open up the investigation to go wider. So on the right, you got to understand when the president speaks, he creates some of his own problems. And the left is certainly going to take advantage of them. But by the same token, Gingrich is right, too. That's conflict of interest. You're hiring an awful... you're like... At some point, I don't know if Gingrich meant this, but this is what I heard. This is what stuck out to me. I have two things I have no explanation for, and I should never come on a national show in that position. But I actually think you'll learn more from me not being able to figure out. I watch this president sabotage himself all the time, and I am not convinced he's that bad. I watched him perform in debates, and nobody who gets in front of large meetings or investors and can communicate and create deals and speak well can be so not well in a political debate. It struck me odd. So I'm watching the president. I don't know what to make of it, but every now and then the cycle's going in his favor, and he jumps in and says something stupid to sabotage it and pull it all away. I don't know what he's up to, and I don't have the answer yet, but I smell a rat. And I smell a rat in this. I don't know if Newt was making this point, but I'll make this point, and this much I know. When you're Mueller and you come from such a biased law firm and you start surrounding yourself with such anti-Trump lawyers, you're like begging for someone to fire you, right? Because the firing creates a better story than what they can't find. And that's the checkmate this president finds himself in. They just want this to go on forever. They know. I mean, what were the leaked Veritas tapes? What did they reveal? Whether it was Van Jones, and he would know no one's closer to Obama. They know they don't have anything, and they don't need anything. It's good for ratings, and the longer they can stretch it out, it stymies and holds the president back. I got news for you. More than the left, the right should want this investigation done as thoroughly and quickly as possible. But why would Mueller be doing and surrounding himself with people trying to beg and egg the president on to firing him? And just to show you that they're all in cahoots, Watch how the media, if there's ever even a statement that could possibly be seen as that, they jump right in. Is the president saying he's going to fire him? Remember how they jumped on that about a month ago or so? They want him to. They're egging him on to. Well, maybe in cut 6, I'm not so far from the truth as you might have thought.
I think first that it's inappropriate for the president to try to dictate the boundaries of the investigation. And I'm glad to see that Robert Mueller is taking the investigation wherever it leads. And I think if he does attempt to fire Bob Mueller, that you're going to see a strong bipartisan backlash in Congress for any move like that. I would think you would have calls for impeachment on the Republican side if that happened. It would be unprecedented in American history for a president to be successful in removing that special counsel and in dictating the terms of an investigation into possibly him and his family and his associates.
So here's the rock and a hard place the president finds himself in, and he usually makes things more miserable, distracted, or creates some new avenue for them to explore by saying stupid things or tweeting stupid things. He's stuck. He's either got to let somebody with a tremendous conflict of interest, surrounded by a bunch of anti-Trump people, create a journey that leads to nowhere but distraction and lasts as long as possible, or he can stop it and then be impeached. That's a rock and a hard place. And how far away is that from the issue? The issue is, did Russia interrupt our election and steer it to Trump? And did Trump work with Russia in order to do that? And there's not a single shred of evidence of that. Not a single. And there's nothing that even if Russia was involved in those hackings that were revealed that weren't true. So you can blame Russia, you can blame Hillary. You can blame the networks and everything that it revealed. But there's not a shred of evidence that a single vote was changed. And you can't find the same Democrats as concerned as we talked about earlier with voter fraud or voter ID or anything else that would preserve. So we know they don't really care about that. They just don't like the outcome. But this is a pickle for the president. And how does this relate to our top story? This is why you have Anthony Scaramucci. But ultimately, not even he. In other words, they punch, they infer, you infer back twice as hard. They come with some factless attack, you come back with real facts. Somebody takes control of the communication of this chaos. And if they hit, you hit back harder. They're less likely to hit. And we get to the end of this and we move on quicker. That's the hope. That's the silver lining. Could Anthony have gotten this position as communication director because of the way he handled the attack on him? And I don't think you're going to see anybody attack him again. Probably. But it's time to turn this and go on the offensive. You want to come out with something stupid like, oh, he must have colluded with Russia. A Russian bought an apartment in one of his buildings. You come back with Lois Lerner. You come back with Schulman. You come back with Miller, and you say, what about the Tea Party that was targeted specifically so the outcome of the 2012 election was nothing like the outcome of the 2010 election? And even the president acknowledged it. Or how about the 7,000 new documents, most of which point to Obama, that the IRS won't release? That's how I think you're going to see the White House start punching back. Or at least that's my hope. But ultimately, there is no hope because you can't solve the communication problems of this White House till you solve the great communicator problem, Trump. Tweeting and speaking. But I think the silver lining is there's the potential to head in the right direction. The right direction if you're rooting for an American president over an American sovereign nation, create jobs, secure our nation, and move us forward because we're all in the same boat. But if you're looking for a partisan circus, I don't know. Maybe we're going to get somebody shot out of a cannon soon. Or maybe that's what Spicer was. Who knows? 855-400-SAVAGE is the phone number. 855-400-7284. Michael Del Giorno in Nashville, in for Dr. Savage. This is the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Oh, yeah. Doing a national show, filling in for Michael Savage, and I've just decided to edit my last segment. I was sitting here reading the story's just too interesting. A jury has convicted. By the way, I'm fascinated by this because I watch a lot of Datelines and so on. You know, you walk in. If I flew to Dallas and killed Robert, I'd get the death penalty or life in prison. But time and time again, you see a husband kill his wife or a wife kill the husband, and then they get like 10 years. I never understand why it applies. It's like deep down they're all really saying, yeah, but he was a jerk. Yeah, but I can't stand my wife. I understand that. You want to throw in her wood chipper. I get it. I mean, it's just crazy to me how it doesn't apply. But here's a case in Michigan, and the jury convicts a Western Michigan woman of first-degree murder in the shooting death of her husband. Now, this was going to be a murder-suicide, only she missed. She had a head wound but didn't die. So she survives the suicide attempt. But what did her in? How did the jury, after deliberating only for 8 hours, figure out that 49-year-old Glenna Durham killed her husband, Martin, 46? Well, it's why you should have a cat and not a parrot. What happened was she kills old Martin. Martin's parrot, Bud, then gets given to his ex-wife, Christina Keller. Christina notices something. The parrot, in his exact voice, keeps saying, "Don't blank shoot. Don't blank shoot." Using the same words he was using in his voice. It was an expletive. But anyway, he literally witnessed the murder, had the voice, and old Bud did her in. Bud the parrot, the key witness in the case, solved. Now, I think my wife loves me, but just to be sure, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to the pet store to get a parrot for security and protection. See you next time on the Savage Nation.
Savage.